The only podcast that has a sword, I believe, is hosted by this man, Doug Lesmerises, the Kings of the North podcast, wherever it is you do your podcasting, also available on YouTube. Doug, thanks so much for the time this morning. Our buddy Tyvis Powell told us this morning that when he was in college and his roommate was one Cardale Jones, you made a visit to their apartment to spend the day with them. Was it everything you thought it would be?
And more. First of all, I could not believe Ohio State let me do it. Second of all, I can't believe that Cardale and Tyvis tolerated me. But I just got to hang out with football players, and I think they played some video games, and some lame middle-aged guy was just sitting on the couch with them. And it was tremendous because I love one of the great things about college football is, like, people love the players. So any chance you have for the fans to actually get to know the players even 5% more, they were giving me, like, tours of their bedroom and stuff. It's like, oh, I have this poster on the wall. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Because, like, the one thing, and I had Tyvis, what Tyvis is doing now is a surprise to nobody. He was among the smartest, most personable players I've covered in 20 years. But that national championship team, I had so many national writers say, like, not only is that a great team, but that was such a collection of great guys to talk to. And Cardale and Tyvis were just two great examples.
Now, Tyvis says that he was the cleaner, more put-together roommate. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think, Tyvis is – well, that was the thing. Tyvis and Cardale would argue who was whose father. Like, they would address each other as son, and it would be like, no, I'm your dad. No, I'm your dad. But honestly, like, if I was – breaking the tie there, I would like. I actually think Tyvis is maybe a little bit more of dad here.
I think they still do that same thing, Doug, so nothing has changed as they've gotten older. Big 12 media days have been going on this week, and I feel like we've gotten a lot of honesty from a lot of these coaches, and they're like, we don't know what's going on. Good for Texas Tech that they'll be able to do this. We're jealous. And Brett Yormark has been up there. He's doubled down on his 5+11 model. Big 10 media days here in a couple weeks. Do you think we're going to get that same kind of honesty?
I hope so. I would love it. And I don't know. I don't know that we'll get it from the commissioner. There's, obviously it's been a big discussion point this offseason that the Big Ten just kind of sits back. Bo and I have talked about it and like sort of lets the other conferences take the lead when it comes to public relations and marketing. But like the Big 12 to me has really positioned itself well as kind of an outlaw conference. And I like that. Like if you're not going to be in the Big 2, what are you? And the Big 12 is parity. The Big 12 is competition. The Big 12 is like letting it rip a little bit. And I think honesty has to be part of that. So I don't agree with everything Brett Yormark is saying. I actually think 5+11 is not great for the Big 12. But I like if they have coaches, Deion Sanders and Mike Gundy and people like that who aren't afraid to get out there and say stuff. I'll be curious because I would imagine the Big Ten has to have a plan, right? So I imagine Brett Bielema will let it rip at Big Ten Media Days and give us some doses of honesty. Ryan Day might do that. He's certainly a voice of the conference. But I think the Big 12, radical honesty for the Big 12, I think is a must. And I don't think the Big Ten's quite all the way there.
Doug, I'm glad you said that you think the 5+11 is not great for the Big 12 because I feel the exact same way. And for the reasons I feel that about the Big 12, I feel like the 5+11 benefits the Big Ten, but Tony Petitti doesn't want that. Are you surprised that Petitti is in favor of the 4+4 +2+2+1 model?
I'm not surprised that he's in favor of it as long as the SEC only plays 8 conference games. Because the math on that, if the SEC doesn't play 9 conference games and the Big Ten does, the Big Ten as a conference is guaranteeing itself 9 more losses a year because everyone's playing one more game and someone has to lose that game. And when you're talking about fighting for the 4th team in your conference, the 5th, the 6th, even the 3rd, and the committee's looking at overall records, you're going to be behind the SEC. So I like the Big Ten fighting because I think if the SEC gets to 9, and I think Petitti said that, then the conversation changes. So partners with the SEC, yes. Friends with the SEC, no. but I feel like it's a little bit of a three-sided, like a standoff, right? Like Dwight and Michael and Nardog in the office with the finger guns at each other. The Big 12, the SEC, and the Big 10, they all kind of have different reasons for disagreeing on the playoff model. It's not a two-sided argument. It's a three-sided argument. But I actually like where the Big 10 is because they have to make sure the SEC doesn't completely get its way here.
Check out the Kings of the North podcast. Wherever it is you do your podcast, you can also find it on YouTube. Doug Lesmerises, our guest. He is the host of said podcast, and he joins us courtesy of the Bryant Heating and Cooling Systems fan guest hotline. Doug, we had Paul Feinbaum on the show yesterday, and he made the point that it's difficult to repeat in college football as national champions, and certainly we would agree with that. He also said he thinks Texas will come in and beat Ohio State week 1, which is fine. But he also said something that I can't seem to get over, which is that he has faith in James Franklin and Penn State this year. And
yeah,
could that be just me not being you look at the roster and it's like, yeah, you should be competing for you should be in the national championship game. You should win the Big Ten. But the James Franklin thing has me unable to get over that hurdle. If James Franklin does not win the Big Ten next year, is he still coaching in Happy Valley?
So first of all, that's your fault for having Feinbaum on. Second of all, he has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to Northern college football, so I'm glad you guys reached out to me. Third, it is not as hard to repeat in college football as you think, because we have run through this, and we did a show on why Ohio State repeating is more likely than you believe. We know there haven't been that many repeats. Georgia, Saban did it once, right? But so many defending national champs got back to the national title game. If you look at the last 25 years, starting like with the BCS in 98, so many teams got back. If a couple more teams had won the national title game, we would think differently on that. So it's not like these national championship teams have been completely derailed during the season. They lost the last game. So I do think we have to be careful. Of course it's hard. There's 135 teams who aren't the defending champs and one who are. So the math's against you. It's not as hard as you think. And a lot of teams lose a lot and get back. I do think there is like a winning pedigree that matters in here. So Ohio State can absolutely do it.
Doug,
Penn State has to compete. I have to give you like 9 answers. I don't think anybody has to win. Penn State has to look good, right? They have to win a big regular season game. They have to be competitive in the playoff. And obviously, if anybody's in the spot that Ohio State was last year, if you want to use national championship or bust, I don't love that phrasing. But if you want to use it, Penn State's the one this year would apply to.
Doug, I didn't know Eric was going to ask you a question about Feinbaum, but it seems like every time we do have Feinbaum on, he causes some kind of stir, and it riles up Ohio State fans. And I was just wondering, you, as the host of the Kings of the North podcast, now obviously Paul has the platform of ESPN, but do you get the same kind of Southern hate like Paul gets Northern hate?
He is a professional provocateur. Like, that's why he is the man. Yeah. So I don't even know if he always thinks the things that he says, right? So, I mean, you got to be careful. Everyone just be careful out there. The guy's a genius at what he does. We say we want our show to be Feinbaum of the North. We want to represent a Northern view. Now, I don't want to go around saying stuff I don't believe, but I've been calling out Georgia as everyone was in a state for about a year and a half there where they thought it was Georgia and everybody else in college football. I always thought that was fraudulent. I mean, Ohio State probably should have beaten Georgia in that semifinal. And the year before when Georgia won it, they lost to Alabama in the SEC title game. And if Alabama's receivers hadn't all gotten hurt, they might have lost in the championship game to Bama. So Georgia has never been as good as the national media will tell you. And the SEC was propped up by Nick Saban for a decade and a half. And so overall, the SEC has never been as good as the national media will tell you. And the entire sport is changing, and the era of SEC and Southern dominance is over. We are not going back to that. We're actually working on a 5-part narrative podcast about that that's going to drop in a couple weeks, explaining what happened in those 25 years and why it's over. So we get a little bit of Southern hate. I mean, I've been quoted a little bit in some more North-South stuff. We would love to be a voice of the North because we're not lying when we say it. The South is good, but the South is not as good as people act like they are. And that is the cold, honest Northern truth.
Doug, we're in the middle of our 20 most interesting programs for the upcoming season, and we're going to be going through Clemson a little later. I am a big believer in Clemson for this year. We'll have their play-by-play man, Don Munson, on. If you had one question to ask Don about the Clemson program for this coming season, what would it be?
I probably know how good Kid Klubnik is going to be. I would probably ask him to try to characterize the potential of this Clemson defense against the other great Clemson defenses that we have seen. Because we know they have probably maybe 2 top 10 picks on the defensive line, and they've had that. I think they might have had a defensive line one year. They had 4 future first-round picks on it. So is this potentially as good of a Clemson defense as he's seen? Something like that.
The Sword of the North, Doug Lesmerises, our guest. Doug, thanks so much for the time today. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks for having me, guys. And just to clarify, I actually have 2 swords, just so we know.
Double the swords, double the fun. Thanks, Doug.
Bye, fellas.
2 swords, always better than one.
And he joins us courtesy of the Bryant Heating and Cooling Systems fan.